there the towns are showing a drop in the groundwater source. Now, this should not happen because it's an Indo-Gangetic plain. It's near to rivers and near to rivers or city streams or small water bodies, big water bodies. Then why is it happening that there is a decline in the groundwater source? Now, the nature report says that maximum decline occurs in Rajasthan, Haryana, and Delhi, three very important states and UT. Also, there is a decline if you move towards the eastern part, towards Bihar, West Bengal, there is also a decline. Now, this webinar will bring to you why this decline is happening and what are the solutions. Now, if we see that the cities are huge guzzlers of this groundwater source, but there is no proper recharge. Why? Because the natural recharge has reduced. This is because of unplanned urbanization. The recharge of the groundwater is not happening. Due to the climate change, what is happening? There are torrential rains, but the number of days for which we are receiving this rainfall is very short. And also urbanization and concretization is taking. So natural recharge has become So what is happening? What should be the solution? So we are bringing the experts from different spheres. We have brought people who will raise a concern. What happens if there is an over extraction of groundwater? What should be done to make this groundwater source sustainable and how it can be integrated in the city's master plan? So we have here experts, Dr. Gilor from NGRI. We have Professor Shashank Shekhar, professor from Delhi University, giving us a solution, how it can solve the problem, how the natural recharge, if it is not happening, what can be done, what are the solutions, how the lakes can be preserved for recharge of groundwater, while Dr. Gilot will talk about what are the consequences if you over extract the water. Now, he has done enormous work in this field, and he has done some excellent work showing that how it can also trigger the earthquakes. So Delhi has been facing some earthquakes also recently. So he will speak on that. And Professor Datta from B.R. Ambedkar University from Lucknow, UP, he will also tell us how, when we are planning, this is especially for the people working in the planning areas, how it can be integrated in cities' master plan. So we start with Dr. Gilor, and before that I request my colleague Vivek to give a small background on Dr. Gilor's work.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. Dr. Vineet Gehlot sir received his MTech and PhD degree from IIT Roorkee, and he served as a lecturer of Department of Earthquake Engineering, IIT Roorkee, in 1996 to 1998, and scientist at Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi, during 1998 to 1999. Currently, he is Chief Scientist at NGRI Hyderabad. His research areas include tectonic geodesy and seismology. He has established GPS network in Andaman Nicobar subduction zone, Indo-Burmese zone, and Himalaya. So we welcome you, sir, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I will be mainly talking on the process as to what is the process, what is this process, what is the physics behind it, and how do you measure it, and then what are the other consequences of excessive groundwater extraction. So that's what I'll talk about. And let me share my PPT. I think you can see my PPT now.
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Okay, great. So, right. So this is the topic which has been suggested by organizers. So I'll be talking on over extraction of groundwater and land subsidence in inorganic plain. And I don't have this is not my focus area of work. I basically work on earthquakes, but then I work on earthquakes through looking through deformation on the earth crust, and then deformation occurs because of various processes. So so this is one of the process which is the groundwater extraction, which also causes deformation. So that's why I got interested in this. So this is what I'm going to do in my short presentation. It's not going to be very long. So I'll talk about land subsidence. Then I'll give you some examples as to where there's been measured, how it has been measured. Then I'll talk a bit of physics as to how does this subsidence actually happen, and then what are the consequences. So this is a basic outline of my talk, which I'm going to give in the next 20 to 25 minutes. So before I go into the actual presentation, let me talk about deformation. So what is deformation? And then as I said, because I work on earthquakes, so it's important to and I must tell you here that the long-term consequence of all this is also in terms of earthquakes. So that's one of the things which all of us need to bother about. So we say the deformation of a medium can occur because of forcing, because of some forces which you have applied, and those forces, or we call them as in terms of loading, it can be internal loading. So that means there's some load within the crust, within the soil matrix, which has been applied within it, so that we call it internal loading. And that internal loading can be large scale, on scale of hundreds of tens of kilometers. It could be on regional scale as well. And that's where plate tectonics fit in. So the forces of plate tectonics, they are called as forces of internal loading, and these forces they deform earth crust. They can deform they can cause uplift, or they can cause subsidence. So that's one kind of loading which we talk about. Then there could be some internal loading, which could be of localized region. Localized, it could be very localized in terms of its extent. And the latest example for this are for example, fluid injection or oil exploration. So those who are, for example, in US, in India, it has not been kind of exposed or popularized, or we don't have data to look into it, because the oil companies don't release that kind of data. But if you look at the data coming from Texas, coming from several states of US where oil exploration is taking place, and where there is second recovery of oil through fluid injection. So they inject fluid, brine water, and then they extract oil. So that's, or there are people who are involved in carbon sequestration, in which they're pumping the carbon into the deep earth, and then it can cause deformation in the region. It can cause earthquake. It can cause deformation in the region. So that's again internal loading, kind of internal loading. It's not at that level where plate tectonics is, but that's also internal loading. Then we have external loading. So you are applying load from this on the top of the earth crust, or very close to it. And then you can have external loading at regional scale in terms of tens of kilometers. So for example, you have built a water reservoir for hydroelectric power generation. So that's a hydrological load which you have applied on the earth surface, and that can deform the earth surface. That can cause land subsidence, that can cause deformation, that can cause damage. And by the way, that can also trigger earthquake. That's the ultimate consequence of all these processes, that all of them are capable of triggering earthquake. You can have some localized loading as well, which could be not exactly at the surface, but it could be slightly deep for a few tens of meter, and that's where the groundwater extraction thing comes in. So that's purely anthropogenic. Of course, even the hydrological loading also comes into the category of anthropogenic activity. But in our context, the anthropogenic activity in terms of groundwater extraction, that's very localized loading. It can affect only a small region or a city, a small city, but it's not on very wide scale. Although probably I'm talking in terms of damage, but actually people have seen it that even this anthropogenic activity can cause land subsidence, or if not land subsidence at all places, but this anthropogenic activity can be very widespread. Probably just now our coordinator told that, she stated that the entire Punjab, Haryana, or Western UP is facing this problem. So that also comes under the category of external loading. So these are the basic thing which I thought I should make you aware. I also want to make you aware that you have heard this subsidence in Joshimath area. Now that subsidence is that the cause of it is totally different from what we are going to talk here. So that subsidence is basically because of mass wasting or landslide. So it's the slope which is coming down, because of which we are facing subsidence in that region. We are facing cracks. The consequence, the final result of all these processes is same. That is the damage to property, damage to the built-up environment, and then of course rehabilitation and things like that. So that's the final outcome is the same. But the process behind all these things, whether Joshimath or Delhi or any other Chandigarh, the process is different. So if I give you a few examples, I just picked up a few slides from available literature. So this is a classic example where people have seen land subsidence in Delhi region, and what they do is in the most basic sense, the way it is done is that you take the picture now, and then you take a picture after a year or 2 years or 3 years, and then take the difference, right? So that's called basically interferometric synthetic aperture radars, INSAR it's called. I work on INSAR, but that's mainly for tectonic deformation. But here, what these people have done is, so they have a very good, elevation picture of a region, for example, Delhi. So there are a few satellites which are of high resolution. So they take pictures, they take these images with time difference. And what people have seen is that if you take the difference in these images, you will be able to identify regions which are experiencing uplift or which are experiencing subsidence. There will be a lot of noise in these data, but then if it is noise, it's going to get cancelled. It's not going to show up as a coherent image. But here, what you are seeing is that there are some regions which are consistently with time are showing a definite pattern. And this pattern is you can see in these sub images to your right. For example, so this must be Delhi airport right here, where my cursor is. And then on the border of this Delhi Gurgaon here, there's a region here which is experiencing huge subsidence. It is experiencing subsidence of almost like 2 centimeter a year. This is huge. You can also find some regions, for example, in Faridabad or some region, if I can read here, this is probably Southwest Delhi. So here, by the way, here you are seeing some uplift. So there is this, yeah. So that's what these authors, they have mentioned, that there were some measures which were taken, once the land subsidence was observed, then some measures were taken by municipality, and then now it turns out that this region is not experiencing any more subsidence. So this is one very good example which I picked up. I have picked it up randomly, so don't think that this is the best example or other examples are not good. It's not that way. I just picked it up randomly. So that's what you do using INSAR. There's another example again from Delhi, which is again showing the same region. Delhi. So this is Delhi airport, and this is Gurgaon here. So on the border of it, this Kapasira border, what we generally refer to, that area is showing consistently. It is showing subsidence in last since 2014. So this image is from 2014 to right up to 2019. So in last 5 years, this particular region is showing consistent subsidence. For general public, if the entire region is subsiding at a uniform rate, it should not matter. But the problem arises when you have differential subsidence. So the region is not uniform, which should not be uniform, in fact, geologically. So region is not uniform, and hence there are some level difference within meters or in tens of meters, and that's where that's what causes problem. That's what causes structural damage. That's what causes cracks in the houses or in civil structures. They have tried to estimate it. They have tried to estimate as to what is the rate of this subsidence. For example, they have picked up a point, here in INSAR. So each image, the images are basically made up of pixel. So they pick up. They have picked up a pixel which is here at the center of this Kapasira, the triangle here. And what it shows is that since 2014 to 2019, this region is subsiding. Earlier, it was subsiding in the first 2 years. It was about 12 centimeter per year, but then it's 16, 17 centimeter per year, and right now it is subsiding at a rate of about 17 centimeter per year. Now that's huge. That's really this should be millimeter actually. I'm sorry, they have written it wrongly. This should be millimeter. A centimeter is huge. I mean, a quarter of a meter subsidence is going to kill everybody. So this must be millimeter for sure. So this region is subsiding at a rate of about 12 to 17 millimeter per year in this region. So that's one way of this is a sure and short method of estimating subsidence in a region. Now, how do you relate it to the groundwater? How do you relate it to the groundwater? Okay, this is another example. Say again from the same region, but so let me not elaborate more on it. So again, they are picking up area which is just north of airport, Dwarka region here, which is also experiencing subsidence in Delhi region. Let me go to let me kind of confirm as to how do you confirm that this subsidence is because of groundwater withdrawal. So just by looking at this INSAR images, you get an idea of subsidence in the region. But then how do you confirm that it is because of groundwater withdrawal? That's where the well data comes in. So for example, this one particular example where in fact I also worked in. So this is one place called in Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, and where we found evidence of subsidence at a rate of about 5 millimeter per year. I'll come to that a bit later. And then what we found was that we could get the well level data in the region, and if we found that the water well level is going down consistently with time. So the water level is consistently it is going down, and then it is this downward trend which is causing subsidence on the underground surface. You need to make sure that this is not a tectonic subsidence. So you're not in a tectonic region. So, for example, Delhi is not a tectonic, is not a tectonically very active region. As I said, if you look at subsidence in Joshimath, so Joshimath, the activities, the subsidence is not because of tectonic deformation, but because of landslide, because of the slow moving landslide. So you need to that's the reason I put that slide to categorize kind of loading and the process responsible for that loading. So here in this case, in case of Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, we know that this tectonically this region is stable, and it's only the groundwater which is causing the subsidence. This is not the first time that we saw these things happening. That the groundwater is going down. There was a paper much earlier, almost like 2 decades back, when people, one of my colleague here, he could identify the regions of region of groundwater withdrawal using a GRACE data. So there is another method called GRACE. So these are the pair of 2 satellites, and they keep measuring the change in gravity in a region. So they keep repeating these satellites. They keep repeating it in their orbit, and they keep taking the repeat observations. So what has been found is that the gravity in this particular area, the area which is pink here, the gravity value is actually decreasing. Now we know for sure that any mass loss here is only because of depletion in the groundwater level, because you have in the aquifer the groundwater, the amount of groundwater is decreasing with time, and that's why you have a negative gravity here. So the GRACE data also gives you a method by which you can calculate by which you can see the groundwater, by which you can see the amount of groundwater present in the aquifer. The only thing is that it gives you a regional picture, so it will not give you a picture. And if suppose you want to do something in Delhi, then probably GRACE will not be, because the resolution is not so great. The resolution is of the order of 300 by 300 kilometer. So you can get the idea about groundwater withdrawal out either from the well data or from the GRACE data. GRACE data will give you a regional picture. But to pinpoint the region, now it's not necessary that all the groundwater withdrawal will cause land subsidence. It's not necessary for sure. It's only certain conditions in which the groundwater withdrawal will cause land subsidence. We know that there are some regions in South India where the groundwater withdrawal is taking place, but that's not causing to any subsidence. So then there's slight physics behind it, which I'll come a bit later. But let me show you a very good example where our coordinator is sitting, where from they're operating. So this is a GPS located in Lucknow. So what GPS gives you? GPS gives you a coordinate with time. So GPS will tell you that in which direction you're moving, and it also gives you the height of the point. With time, it can give you the variation of height with time. So what you are seeing here is this is a GPS site placed in Lucknow, and what it shows is the variation in north coordinate. It shows the variation in east coordinate. So this is basically variation in the latitudinal direction. This is the variation in longitudinal direction, and you see that this site is moving at a certain rate of about 4 or 5 centimeter per year, which is perfect. That's what that's how the plate should move. But what you are seeing here in this bottom panel is the up component. So that's the height. So what it shows is that, look, with every season, so you have these fluctuations. So you have the highest point here is the peak summer period. And then when the rainfall, when the precipitation occurs, the site goes down. When the precipitation is over, and the ground will start losing the water because of evaporation, because of exploitation, then the site will start coming up. So you have seasonality in these variations. So you will have so this is the downward trend it denotes the rainy season, and the upward trends denote the winter season. So you have rainy season and the winter summer season. That's perfectly all right, as long as these cycles, they repeat itself without any shift. But what is happening here? What you see here is that there is a downward trend here. So this is, again, I'm emphasizing, this is Lucknow. So this site is actually going down. This site is subsiding at a rate of about 2 to 3 millimeter per year. Now, so far, probably the rate is not alarming. So far, the rate, the entire region is subsiding or uplifting. In this case, long-term subsidence, it is subsiding at a kind of a uniform rate. So that's why people are not experiencing any structural damage. But you never know if this rate increases, or if there is some differential settlement in the region, people will start experiencing damage in their houses as well. You can update this. I'll not go into the detail of this particular image, but essentially what I'm showing is again the grace image, which we have updated now. So we know that this particular region close to Haryana, Punjab, and Delhi, it is experiencing some depletion in the groundwater. So that's kind of, we keep repeating these measurements. We keep analyzing these data on a regular basis to ensure that which regions are experiencing more groundwater depletion. So let's come to the physics now. So what is it which causes this land subsidence? So as I said, it's not necessary that the region where the groundwater withdrawal is taking place, it's not necessary that all regions which are experiencing this kind of phenomena will experience subsidence. It's not necessary for sure. So there's something called consolidation theory in a very broad sense. So that's called Bio's consolidation theory. And what it says is that you have a soil strata in which you have these sedimentary grains. So you have the soil structure, and then in between you have pore spaces, right? The blue one are the pore spaces. Now, if you are extracting too much of water, then these pore spaces are collapsing, and it is this collapse which is causing the subsidence in the ground. Now, imagine if your soil structure is heterogeneous, you will have differential subsidence on the surface. And if you have differential subsidence on the surface, you're bound to have damage in your houses. There's another way of saying it, that there's another way of, so this is, fortunately, so far the things are within elastic limits. So in fact, this is what actually happens every year. So you have rainy season in which all the pores are filled with water, and then again they are because of groundwater extraction and evaporation, all the pores are they lose the water. So it happens on regular basis, and it's mostly remain in elastic limit. So you know the land keeps jumping up and down. But then if there's
you have 5 minutes.
Sure. If you're over exploiting, then you can have irrecoverable elastic deformation. Let's not go into detail too much. If those who love mathematics, then this is how you calculate the calculate the ground subsidence or the ground deformation because of change in pore pressure or because of change in water content at depth. These are very standard forms of mathematics, and anybody who has got slight knowledge of mathematics can do it. So that's not a big job. So what are the consequences of all this? So number one, you have depletion in groundwater level, which is obvious because of continuous extraction of groundwater. It can cause some chemical changes, which I'm not going to discuss right now, because that's where leaching, arsenic contamination, fluoride contamination, all these things come along with groundwater extraction. So probably somebody else would be covering it. So we're not looking at chemical changes. We're only looking at the land subsidence. It can cause damage. It can cause damage to the structure, civil structure, including houses. And then finally, I mean, if you continue with this, then it can also trigger earthquakes, and that's the ultimate consequence of all these things. To give you a sense of, to give you a very good example here, imagine places which were glaciated once upon a time, and they were glaciated in the last glacial maximum, and all the glaciers have been removed now. And now, what people there in that region, for example, places like Greenland or Iceland, the land is coming up. The land is uplifting, and it is this uplift. It is this rebound of the land which is triggering earthquake in that region. So that could be the ultimate consequence of all these things. We tried to relate. We could successfully relate the process of earthquake occurrence in Delhi region with the monsoon in Delhi in that region. And if you look at here, look at the sheer coincidence here. This is the GRACE data. The contours here are the GRACE data, which are showing the amount of groundwater pump derived from GRACE data, amount of groundwater pumping in the region, and look at the earthquakes which are aligned here. You see a very good correspondence between the two. And if I give you another point, if you look at another coincidence here, so this is the rainfall. So you see that the maximum precipitation is during July and August. The correspondence is just opposite here. If you look at the rainfall, so the rainfall is maximum in July and August, and these are the number of earthquakes each month. Each month of earthquakes of last 50 years. So they are all stacked together. And what you see here, that the time when you have monsoon, the number of earthquakes decrease in the region. Now, this is not just a coincidence. There is a science behind it. So there is a load, water load. The moment precipitation occurs, the water load which goes into the aquifer, it stabilizes some of the faults where these earthquakes are occurring. Now, in this case, fortunately, on annual basis, it is stabilizing the fault. It is making these faults to be less productive, less earthquake productive. But it can have the other way also can happen. So too much of groundwater extraction can cause earthquake because you are removing that load from the aquifer, and you are destabilizing the faults there. So you never know that tomorrow, with good quality of data, we can and with continued over extraction of groundwater, it is possible that you may start linking the groundwater extraction with the earthquakes as well. This has been done elsewhere. It has been seen. Let's not go into the modeling part of it. It has been seen elsewhere. It has been seen in California, for example, wherein the continuous drought or the seasonal changes in groundwater, in aquifer is modulating the earthquakes, is modulating the frequency of the earthquakes. So with continued groundwater extraction, it is possible that it can trigger earthquake, it can modulate the frequency of earthquake, which could be even more damaging than causing cracks in the houses. I think I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilroy. And that's a warning bell for Lucknow, Faridabad, Gurgaon. We understand there is a constant subsidence near the airport region. We understand that due to over extraction, this subsidence is going to happen more and more in future if we don't actually think about conserving our groundwater source. Here comes Professor Shashank Shekhar, who will talk about the sustainability of this groundwater source. And before he starts his lecture, I request my colleague Vivek to actually share some of the background of his work.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Shashank Shekhar sir is a distinguished scientist and academician with a proven track record of original research and different teaching. Currently, is working as a professor in Delhi University, and he has also worked in Central Groundwater Board, Ministry of Water Resources. Well, we welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
You will be presenting my slide, or shall I do it myself?
As you say, sir, if you want, then I can share.
Please share.
Please.
Okay, I'm doing.
That will be good.
Okay, sir.
So we are all talking urban today. It was a nice, eloquent talk by Dr. Gehlot, where groundwater depletion was a culprit. And but why are we focusing on urban system right now, before my presentation is visible to you? Because to develop, we need to urbanize. We need to decongest the rural economy. And when you urbanize, you create a high density population with better quality of life. And when you do that, the energy and water consumption is very high. And that is where all the problems start. You know, urban systems are heat islands, and they are water scarce and water stressed. And it is here that we make a sense to discuss, and Susmita was talking about master plan based suggestions. Yes, few things have been cropping in my mind for long, and maybe in this panel discussion, we will try to put them in some perspective, that shall we aim to do the landscaping and the urban architecture in a better way. So please go to the next. Urban groundwater, urban systems have the problem of energy availability, equity, problem of water availability and equity, then solid and liquid waste. And we have to make our living out of all these. Now the easily available source is groundwater. Why Kapas Heda, which was shown in the earlier slide, the land is subsiding, maybe because of the groundwater abstraction. But why groundwater abstraction has taken place in Kapas Heda region of Delhi? Because it is a freshwater lens. And there are colonies which are not well supplied. And you know, all the urban agglomerations of Ganga Basin have created a whirlpool in the groundwater system. So you have a regional groundwater table, and then there are urban whirlpools like urban heat island. And that is where we have the challenge. So how do we map the urban aquifers? That's one of the biggest challenge. Aquifer heterogeneity. Then what is the quality variation in the urban aquifer? See, at the end of the day, the work of science and scientists is to make our life easy and happy. So we just can't say that you don't extract. We have to say that we extract and extract it sensibly. Then what are the water pollution sources? Then where is my aquifer vulnerable, and how to sustain the groundwater exploitation and augmentation of the groundwater reserves to recharge. These are some of the challenges of groundwater systems in urban agglomeration worldwide. Next. Please go to the next. Yeah. So it needs an effective policy framework backed by rigorous scientific research, then effective groundwater or effective water governance measures, then sensitization of masses. It should not be that you ban dowry and still dowry is most prevalent thing in Indian society. So there has to be, masses have to be convinced, and then people's participation. Next. These are some of the conventional approaches which we had been talking for a long, that we must do demand side management and water conservation. We must do supply side management, and then water resource augmentation. See, we talk of this because we have to make a sensible effort in the existing system. If city of Lucknow has become a whirlpool in groundwater system of Ganga Basin, it does not mean that we will make a new Lucknow. That's not possible. You can't make a shift capital from Delhi to some other place. We have to think of way out here. Next. Now, water use efficiency. Yes, these are age-old things. No showers. Where we need some good value addition is in the industrial sector. Many of you might not be aware that industries are also good water consumers in many places, and they have potential demands. We need to do some value addition in cooling process, condensate recovery. And in agriculture sector, we have to think of more crop per drop and maybe sensible irrigation practice rather than flood irrigation, and cropping of the crops which are related to those agroclimatic zones. Biourinals, they were an excellent discovery. We need more sophisticated systems. Now we have biosystems. Washing machines in urban sector needs to be reinvented. The automatic washing machines are a big water guzzlers. And then I must say that differential slab and water pricing in an appropriate way is required. See, I think this must be the 50th seminar or webinar where I am saying that all multi-storied houses should have water meter in individual flats. And the water tariff should not be included in maintenance charge, because we are talking of urban system, because there is no way to know who is wasting how much. Next. Next slide. Yeah. Then leakage and pilferage is one of the biggest problem in urban supply system. First, the pipelines are old. Then there are localities from where the water is, just stolen. So that needs to be controlled. Then we need to think dual water supply is there in many places, but now it's not a big fashion. But we need to think of zero liquid discharge colonies. That all the sewer which is coming out from a colony should be utilized in that locality. Unless and until we bring the properly treated grey water into the urban water system, there won't be a big solution. Then for industrial units, they have to adopt ZLD, that is all, and they should be supplied with treated water for washing, mopping. Most of them are utilizing their own resources right now. Then next is all talked about, that unless and until you assure water supply, you cannot expect urban population to be sensible, because all of us are human beings. We will open the tap and go to sleep. The next problem is a problem of equity. Many a times the rich urban areas are supplied with better river waters, and the poor and the unauthorized, so-called unauthorized colonies, I don't call them unauthorized colonies, so-called unauthorized colonies and the urban villages, they are dependent on their own groundwater system. Even though in some cases the posh localities have good groundwater system, so they can be, it is desired that they meet their requirement from the local groundwater system and the fresh water be diverted to other areas. Next. See, all urban rivers, unless and until they are conserved and protected and their floodplains are protected, we cannot have a dependable aquifer for supply from groundwater system or to meet the needs of water during any emergency situation. And there we require appropriate environmental flow for in all these rivers. Conservation and rehabilitation of natural water bodies in future in urban systems are going to be the next game changer as a local source of groundwater supply. If you don't have the any other source, they will be the next game changers. And slowly you will see that we will be moving to the age-old practice of depending upon such water bodies and the adjacent aquifers. We need to conserve the wetlands, yes. Then artificial water bodies and wetlands, they need to be created, but with proper precaution and sound understanding of the hydrological system. And the next sensible approach with all scientific precaution is that we should go towards managed aquifer recharge using water treated of appropriate standard, and they can be diverted to artificial water bodies, but there are a lot of precautions. It is not just you make a pond and divert it treated sewerage. The managed aquifer recharge has to be planned scientifically. So we will, and that will be another game changer for the urban water system. Flood water harvesting. Or, you know, in North India, we have a monsoonal regime. All these years, for so many 10, 20 years, the floodplain aquifers was exploited. Now today you go to the floodplain aquifer of Delhi, there are pools of water here and there. The groundwater system has recovered and it has become more waterlogged. Such an excellent renewable source for urban water supply. And that is where we time and again we insist on the pilot project of Palla. That is a typical flood water harvesting project. All those anthropogenic measures may be at catching flood and so is now redundant. What is there is that a mega flood which was allowed to spread in a preserved floodplain has recharged the aquifer to its natural. It is now all waterlogged. Depth to water level is 1 to 2 meters below ground. So in science, we have a theory of catastrophic uniformitarianism. That is, though the processes which are taking place today were taking place in past, but sometimes a catastrophic event leaves its impact much more than the gradual processes. And that is what the flood water harvesting does. Then rainwater harvesting and artificial recharge, it has to go on with a lot of surveillance and goodwill from individuals. Next. And I forgot treated sewerage water. Yes, that is there. That is the only source now. Now this is the Palla floodplain where we are doing floodwater harvesting. And all my intention is just to show that please conserve the floodplain because the aquifers are renewable source of water supply. Today we are extracting 30 million gallons per day during the peak demand period, and then every monsoon, the flood, you can see the flood behind, replenishes. So what we do a scientific dewatering of the aquifer by 4 to 5 meters. Sometimes when there is a lean period, maybe it is not fully recharged in the next monsoon. So you can expect that for 2 to 3 years, there could be a secular decline. But any mega flood which comes in 10, 20 years, it replenishes it fully. At this time, it has done in Delhi. Next. And the economics is that for last 20 years, we have supplied water worth 15,000 crores, much more than this. It's not only 20 years, now it's 23 years, roughly. And the capex at that time was 15 to 20 crores with some maintenance, periodic maintenance, and then maybe some SCADA cost would have been something. Next. Yeah, this is the river and the floodplain and the system. Next. The way we are culturally associated. This is Delhi's water body rejuvenation in Dwarka sub-city, and this is much required in all urban landscapes, that we have to conserve the water bodies. And then maybe if you are developing parks, let's develop park with ponds, and they be used as recharge structure. If condition is appropriate, managed aquifer recharge can be done, not randomly where there is shallow water level area or the formations are not good. An estimate by one of our groups says that the water bodies of Dwarka, if properly conserved and made functional, can meet huge water demand of Dwarka sub-city partially, maybe up to 40 to 50% under appropriate condition. Next. Go to the next one. Yeah. Now, this I have already spoken, but because sometimes out of enthusiasm, some young engineers or some advisors, they go for this managed aquifer recharge and soil aquifer treatment, but they must keep in mind that when we are doing that managed aquifer recharge, first, the water available has to be appropriate. Can you go to the next one? Next slide. And then these are all requirements. It's a huge list, that it has to be a permeable soil. There should not be clay. It should be fine sand loam. Then the water table should be preferably 10 meters below. Then only this thick stack of soil or aquifer will filter it appropriately. There should be a pilot project done and then implemented. But sometimes out of enthusiasm, very often we think and go in a shallow water level area that may create more problem. So we must avoid that. Next. And second, before we go, just hang on. Very often I have seen people proposing for SAT and managed aquifer recharge in hard rock areas. All the manuals clear cut says that it should be avoided in hard rock areas because hard rock aquifers are conduits of water. They don't do any absorption, and they don't purify the water. So it should be always avoided. So there has to be at least 10 to 20 meters of Vadose zone. Though EPA sometimes says up to 2 meters, but ideally it should be 10 to 20 meters. We have to go for a rugged system. Soil permeability has to be good. There should be no leaching of matter from the sediments. Excessive land area is required. That is a problem. And then there are some risk associated. Next. So we should not forget that if you have heavy metals and other things, or if you have arsenic, SAT may not be very effective. So the input water has to be of appropriate quality, and there has to be proper cleaning so as to avoid clogging of the infiltration bases. Managed aquifer recharge and soil aquifer treatment would be the next game changer in all mega urban cities if your rivers are not sufficient to meet your demands. Next. Yes, they reduce evaporation rate and insect breeding. Then they are natural buffer for seasonal variations because you have storage there. And they mitigate saltwater and contaminant intrusion. Next. Yes, sometimes, Bandhanwari, I was the most vocal in opposing that project as a landfill site in green Delhi ridge of Haryana. And then they said, we will make it the most scientific. and there will not be a single order going outside. We know how your sensor-based urinals in male toilets have been working in institutional buildings of India or world. We need a rugged system. It should not be very soft and sensitive. And then this Bandhanwari was a mess. The most sophisticated, advanced landfill site. So if we are planning for managed aquifer recharge and soil aquifer treatment, there should be no sewer water diversion directly. Very often, all the ponds in urban villages are seeing this today, that they are nothing but the soak pit collectors. Next. So surface source water characterization, that is the most important thing for a managed aquifer recharge. Why I say this? Because this is required. Infiltrated water characterization, impact assessment, and demarcation of the area of influence. Next. Now there should be BOD, COD, and DO monitoring. We are not going to describe it. Next. Eutrophication monitoring. Next. Next, this is a eutrophication site. Next. Now, before we go to this, that alternative source of water supply for urban areas, let me quickly give a jerk and break here and ask, how many of us have visited mega, the tall buildings with basement parking or basement facility in urban agglomerations of India, and what is their experience during monsoon time? I have visited many out of curiosity, and I have friends and I keep talking to them. If the water level is shallow in that area, invariably the basements have water leakage into them. Now, at one point, you are talking that urban water levels should rise up because you have exhausted it. And when it rises, then it creates a mess. What mess? All the basements, they get flooded. That happens in Okhla, Delhi. That happens in, that games village near Akshardham. So which development paradigm are we discussing here for the master plan? I suggest that I was talking to many people. Let's go for Maharashtra model, where you don't have, underground parking. Building is there is stilt parking of 2 levels. You have 2-level basement, UG1, UG2. There is a stilt parking of two levels, and then the FAR of the building is increased. So they are allowed to increase the height. So you give 2 more floors, allow them two levels of stilt parking. Why I say this? Because I have been moving around a lot in areas of Delhi where the governance mayors have succeeded and water levels have risen. The basements are getting flooded because the waterproofing has an age and time. And when it yields, the cost is huge. And most of the time, many of these official societies, you go to this ISBT government building, there is a basement parking, you see the situation. I have visited many, sometimes they are haunted, but still I just walk in and see. There's a lot of water seepage problem. Now, then perhaps this development paradigm did not suit us. We need a sensible change in master plan, and we can go for vertical development by increasing the FAR and thinking only in terms of stilt parking. For that will create a lot of urban mess. Why? Because the subsurface, some say it is 25 feet, 10 meters of slab, also creates hindrance in groundwater flow path, leads to local rise in the groundwater system when there is no extraction. Second, in this August gathering of 168 participants, I see on my screen right now, is 15 meters depth to water level. overexploited for an urban area? I say that it is a safe depth to water level for an urban area. When two levels of parking are roughly 12 feet and 12 feet, say 15, 30 feet, and then the basement, some 32 feet. So 33 feet makes 11 meters. Ideally, there should be no saturated zone within, if there is a high-rise building with basement of some 10 meters or 11 meters, so that should be in the unsaturated zone. Or else the expenditure on the maintenance and the kind of hydrostatic forcings and pressures it will have, I have seen the buildings are facing a lot of problems. So do we need to define a new water level which is safe and sustainable for urban systems in India? Shall we say 15 meters below ground level is a sensible? It should not be treated as overexploitation, because you have already intruded 10 meters below. So at least the water level should be 5 meters. So two things which I had in my mind, two new things which I wanted to discuss here. First, shall we make a change in the development paradigm of urban systems and avoid going for subsurface parkings or utility or facility up to 2 to 3 levels I have seen, and rather go for stilt, means above the surface, you make the foundation strong as desired, and then go to maybe 2 levels of stilt parking and increase the FAR in building height. That call has to be taken at the level of master plan, so that modifications will be desired there. Second, is 15 meters below ground level a good depth to water level in urban areas where there are a lot of multi-story buildings? I think it is so. Otherwise, shallow water level area in urban cities are going to destroy the building foundation. This is my experience and learning, which I have visited many places. And I wanted to write a paper, but then I didn't get a time, and so I spoke in this forum. Anyway, so you have to think of, the point is, it is sensible that the urban agglomeration have some exploitation of the local groundwater system, because the fully saturated aquifer are not good for the basement utilities. Exploration and development of brackish water aquifer, desalination of some, they are all the alternate sources Delhi is doing, but we are not doing anything on recycle and reuse of water to a significant extent. Next. So now we will skip this. River-based supply is a big one. It's a big project. It's economically viable. Next. But groundwater supply issues and challenges, yes, the volume is less, but it is very handy, readily available. And if you have battery of tube wells, it is dependable. It is dependable. It is not dependent on vagaries of the monsoon. It is not dependent on interstate riparian agreements. And it does not require much treatment. Next. All these conventional management practices lacked that they were not the bottoms-up approach. They didn't have the linkages with sociological and ecological factors and economic and political factors. Why have Delhi spread into so-called unauthorized colonies and slums? Do you know that many people who live here are government employees working as assistants in as many ministries? Because the cost of DDA buildings are so high that they couldn't buy. They couldn't buy. So it's not just we say that just close it. You can't do that. Next.
Oh, sorry, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm seeing my time. That's why I'm hurrying. So next. Now, integrated water resource management requires integration of all these ecological, socio-economic, environmental, and political perspective. And then we have to maybe make an allowance for surface water and other things. That is UN declaration, not mine. Next. So it should be economically viable and efficient utilization of water resources. Equity is a challenge in urban agglomeration, and that should be adhered to, and then it should be environmentally sustainable exploitation. And that's where we say manage aquifer recharge, water bodies, they all make sense. Next. Now integration, in integrated water resource management, almost everything is there except your marriage. Next. And that should also, so now you may skip this. Next. So this is an integrated water resource management system where you have recycle, reuse, efficient agriculture use, and so many things. But this is an ideal system, very difficult to achieve. Nonetheless, even if we can achieve 60% of it, that will be a great thing. Next. Water quality challenges in urban agglomeration is a huge problem, and I think CSC is working on that front. So they will, next. See, anthropogenic alteration to water quality is mostly an urban phenomenon. Rural people don't do it. You pollute the groundwater system. You pollute the urban groundwater system. Your 50, 60 drains are all polluted because it's your mess which is flowing in the drains. Why not treat it at local level and then allow it to flow? Next. 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 Then emerging pollutants, pharmaceuticals, personal and beauty care, pesticides, insecticides, and microplastics. Next. There has been no systematic study on emerging pollutants right now. We need huge database. This is your landfill leachate. Next. These are all urban agglomeration. This is your petrol tank or your gas filling station where you take your petrol. If there is a leakage, it creates a mess. Next. Now, there has to be a regular and continuous assessment of urban water quality, identification of water quality assessment in critical area, domestic sewerage, bottoms up approach means sewer treatment has to be at local level, decentralization in STPs, lining of drains, non-functional STPs are not tolerated, optimization of STP, recycle and reuse. I think we can just skip to go to the last because next, forget, just go to the last. Just one sec. See, Delhi has, can you go back? Yeah, 2 minutes more. Yeah, go back. One slide back. One slide पीछे जाए. If you see in Delhi, it is mostly the river water, which is 87%, which is supplied to Delhi. And groundwater has for institutional supply, for individual, there can be many. And still, by 2000, in another decade, Delhi will be water deficit by 1,000 million gallons per day. From where are we going to get that water? There's no scope. You can't build Renuka and Kisau and solve these dreams. The only source is all these next STP slides. Next. Go further. Yeah, come on. Go down. Some 800 mgd or something is available in from STPs of Delhi. And if we recycle, go down. If we keep going down, if we recycle and reuse that can solve the problem of Delhi to a big extent. So one is floodwater harvesting, and then there is recycle and reuse of the yeah, just wait. So go back. 607 mgd was the sewerage water available. So what is future of any urban city like Delhi? We must recycle and reuse our wastewater. There should be ZLDs, then water bodies and ponds. We have to have rainwater harvesting and other things. Yes, they have to be more sensible. And then the biggest challenge will be recycling and reusing the wastewater and managed aquifer recharge. If all this is done, I think we can still go for urbanization in a big way and decongest the rural agrarian economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shashank Shekhar. So the salient points which came up is the floodplain recharge, which you have given Palla Wetfield, which is a very famous one in Delhi, and how conservation of floodplain is important, because we are right now talking about the floodplains only, and conservation of water bodies is also another point which you like to focus on. But yes, recycle and reuse of wastewater is also what you are thinking of. Monitoring is a must, that is what you said. And so we actually, since we are actually focusing on this on Gangetic plain, the floodplains, so these points become very important to follow. And how this can be integrated into the master plan, we have Professor Venkatesh Datta to tell us how these points, which Professor Shashank Shekhar actually talked about the conservation of the floodplains, conservation of water bodies, how monitoring is very important, can be integrated in cities master plan. Over to you, Professor Venkatesh Datta. Before that, I request my colleague to give some background of Professor Datta's work.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Venkatesh Datta has contributed to significant changes in public discourse, law and policy of sustainable water resource management in India. He has been a scholar and British Achieving Fellow UK. He is a member of Smaller River Rejuvenation Committee of Uttar Pradesh and currently working as a professor in Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. Over to you, sir.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you so much for this introduction. Basically, I would be talking on how do you mainstream the groundwater concern, especially the recharge, the quality, and the quantity, the over extraction that is happening into the master plan. But before I do that, I would like to touch upon, basically, this is the structure of my presentation. I would be also giving you some note on what do we mean by resilience and river cities, because these are the new concepts which have come up in this decade only. The urban groundwater challenges. How do you check groundwater exploitation, especially in the urban and peri-urban areas? Then touching upon the contamination risk zoning that we are doing in the urban context with respect to nitrate, fluoride, and emerging contaminants. And how do you scale up the recharge? How do you delineate the critical aquifer protection areas in the master plan and reserve the water sanctuaries? We have developed this concept of water sanctuary, just like the National Park and Biosphere Reserve. And finally, touching on the technology management and policy, because policy and technology, they are very important. Some of the concepts like IWRM, I consider they are nirvana concept. They are too complex to be achieved. There are so many variables, so many indicators, and our society works on different scale. There is a scale problem, the problem of heterogeneity. So basically, coming back to resilience, what do we mean by climate resilience? Basically, by climate resilience, we want to prepare our cities and towns and areas to anticipate, not only anticipate, but also prepare for and also respond to. So you are anticipating, preparing, and responding to various climatic disturbances. And if I club mitigation and adaptation together, so maybe I would be close to resilience. So basically, climate resilience in water is how do you take steps to cope up with climate-related risks. And it is also about coping with scale, impact, and while coping, you should also develop your system in such a way that the system is not going from worst to even further worst situation, that you have to bring back system to sustainable system. But now there is a concept of transformational resilience. We are talking in terms of long-term structural measures, multifaceted measures to address the disruption in the life of the river, because this is the title is the river city. And not only river, but also the communities, the bank, floodplain, the riparian communities that depend upon the river. So this concept of river cities is not new. In 2010, there was this network called River Cities Platform. Now NIUA is using this term river cities. Then there's a River City Alliance, which was developed last year, 2021. But the concept of river cities and river cities platform is quite old. They refer to all the cities located on river banks. And this network or the partnership is between various initiatives, the cultural, the environmental, and political. Political is very important because most of the actors are non-science actors. I call them the non-science actors, which have major importance on the R&D ecosystem, the political system, the institutional system, the cultural system. They are going to impact how your groundwater is going to be withdrawn. And these factors, they work seamlessly. Basically, it's very difficult to find how they are connected with each other. So the River Cities platform is not only about these initiatives, but also developing a dynamic platform on rivers and the waterfronts as the cultural space. Then there's a River Cities network, which was developed in Netherlands, the International Institute for Asian Studies. And it says that if you read their objective, a transdisciplinary network to promote ecologically and socially inclusive revitalization of rivers and the landscapes, riverscapes, cities, and neighborhoods that coexist with them. So I am bringing these terms so to give you an overview of the river city and the climate resilience, the resilience that is there in the title of the talk. So the river city network, it is a nexus that provides a lens through which you critically analyze the relationships between human settlements and rivers over time, as well as a platform to engage in collective action to revitalize local river ecosystem and the communities. So these are the definitions and the contours they have already given. The feed forward loop. First, you tell the story, the history of the river and water system, the map, the river city, and then work on river revitalization. So these are the concepts, the academic concepts, which are going on for last almost like 2 decades. Now, coming back to my talk, to improve the resilience, to make your system robust, your cities, and mainstream into master plan, first of all, very important, you have to map the aquifers. And map the aquifers on a scale which is desirable, which is scientifically sound. Nowadays, we are mapping on a 1:50,000, 25,000 scale. I would say map on a 1:5,000 scale. And this is not very difficult. We have so many piezometers. Now, network of piezometers are there. We have automatic DWR stations by the various states and the Central Groundwater Board. And we also have the lithological, structural, those maps, the 3D maps are there, aquifer maps. Prepare a detailed aquifer maps and locate the potential recharge zones. Recharge zones will have several parameters of soil, lithology, physiography, and the parameters of different hydrogeological parameters. So they are the areas where you are going to recharge. And those areas are, for example, the oxbow lakes, the cutoff meanders, the old channels of the river, the first few orders of the streams, So, and intelligently managing the extraction of the groundwater. So this is what CSE is trying to do. Now, groundwater is the groundwater economy. It remains the lifeline of urban economy. But this is not accounted in the city GDP. Because of its universal availability, you pump anywhere and you get the water. There's a universal.
Sorry, sir, your screen is not shared right now. It's gone off.
Oh, just a second. Has it come back now?
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
So there are sidebars which are creating problems. So I was telling about the groundwater economy. The groundwater is dependable, reliable. You have low capital and low maintenance, and you get 24/7 water. You just switch on your pump and you get water. It's a common property resource. It is non-excludable. You cannot exclude others from overusing it, extracting it. So non-excludable, non-rivalrous. So all the elements of common property resource, no single person or organization can own it. Highly uneven distribution. So its utilization makes it impossible to have a single management strategy, because one size doesn't fit all. You have several aquifers. You have, like in UP, you have the upland, you have the Bundelkhand region, dry, the center, midland, the Ganga alluvial plain, the Hughes tract, and then lower Tarai areas, which are high on groundwater. The groundwater depth is quite high. I mean, the shallow aquifer zone is there. So there are deep versus shallow aquifers, and the groundwater economy is undervalued. So I would say that the groundwater economy is highly inefficient, and it is one of the biggest market failure. Because of the overdraft, we are not able to realize the importance of groundwater in cities' economy. Drop is almost 15 to 20 meters in 2 decades. If you see overall scenario, some of the cities we are witnessing more than 1 meter of decline every year. Aquifers are beginning to compress and collapse. There are irreversible damage. You lose the plasticity of the aquifers. You lose the same aquifers cannot recharge that much volume of water. It is generally considered that it is renewable, but once you lose the plasticity of the aquifers, once you lose the same criteria, like, you know, if you have more overdraft, the aquifers are compressing. We have seen, especially in the Gangetic aquifer areas, we cannot recharge the same amount of water. So it is wrong to assume that aquifers are renewable resources. Aquifers are already beginning to collapse. Their plasticities are decreasing. And there are no legislation on aquifer protection areas. We have made the groundwater bill, we have made in UP, like I was also part of the drafting, which went into the drafting of the groundwater bill and the Act 2019. But we realized that we need to make the areas, the floodplain areas, the terrace, the oxbow lakes, the paleo channels, those recharge areas. Of course, there are some of them are discharge areas. There is a high discharge of the groundwater, but both of them are critical aquifer protection areas. There is no legislation either in the master plan or any separate notification. And wastewater, the biggest negative externality, because you withdraw from groundwater. Most of the cities, they survive on groundwater. 90%, I would say, like Delhi gets almost like 8 to 9% groundwater, because Delhi is quite lucky. Delhi has money and Delhi has everything. So it can get water from Satluj, Beas, Ravi, and Yamuna and Ganga and all the rivers. But what about the other cities? They are all surviving on groundwater. And once you take the fresh water, your 80%, more than 80% load is wastewater. And that wastewater is not being treated in that desirable manner. It is going to your, again, rivers, your lakes, your water bodies, and polluting. So wastewater is also one of the biggest externalities in the process of urbanization. And we are not charging anything for water, especially Delhi. Of course, there's an increasing block tariff. But what about the other cities? Canal water is free in UP. Groundwater is like very nominal house tax we pay and groundwater surcharge is there, water surcharge is there. So there's a vicious circle, and we have to make into a virtuous cycle. So I will not touch upon these urban groundwater policies because there is a regulation on registration, but it is so difficult. We are facing in registration of the pumps. In the law, we have made this provision that every pump would be registered, but there is no agencies coming forward to register the pump. And there is a top-down approach. The government would enforce the regulation, but how to do it? Who is going to do it? Who is going to meter? Who is going to install the water meter? What should be the alternate approach? Who owns the groundwater? To what extent one can own the groundwater resources? So we already have Indian Easement Act 1884. So if you have the land, you have the groundwater. So all these issues, capacity building. So urban groundwater is not mainstreamed still into the overall umbrella of water policy, right? So there's a growing disconnect between policy and practice, and I would say this is the biggest valley of death. We are working on master plans. Policy, again, there are some shortcomings, but when it comes to practice, how do you bridge the gap? How do you take care of the challenge of different scales and what kind of transitions retrofitting is needed to bring these cities as water sensitive cities? Challenge of capacity, multipliers. We need multipliers to implement changes, institutions and civil societies. Now, I will not go into basics. Everybody, you must be knowing that nearly 20%, nearly 40% of India's total replenishable groundwater resource comes from the Gangetic Basin, Ganga Basin. The biggest alluvial plain, 2,500 kilometers of large flat land. And the yield potential is very high, almost like 40 liters per second, but that has also caused the biggest critically overexploited region of the world. Ganga Basin is the most overexploited region in the entire world. See the freshwater withdrawals. India, 760 BCM, and China, 554, US, 478, and fourth is the Pakistan. So you see how India is the world's biggest consumer of groundwater. If I try to put this figure of 760 BCM, the annual groundwater extraction would be almost 26 times the water storage in Bhakra Nangal Dam. That much of water, 26 times the Bhakra Dam we are just withdrawing from. So there's a biggest, what you call the mass loss, critical mass loss. In the first presentation we have seen the NASA's GRACE satellite, the gravity differences. And that mass loss is happening. We report into few centimeters, few inches or feet. But volumetric loss into kilometer cube is huge. Water table decline. But in UP, we are facing 4 major types of problems. We have overexploited the areas like Western UP, Bundelkhand areas, and some of the top 10 cities like Lucknow, Meerut, Agra, and Ghaziabad, Noida, all these areas. Then water logging in the Eastern UP areas, water table is high. So if the water table is at 8 meters below the ground level, you cannot do rainwater harvesting or any water harvesting. Your basement seepage will start, your underground structure would be affected. Water quality deterioration, some of the areas, arsenic, fluoride, iron. These we have mapped. Huge arsenic is coming in Suklaganj, Unnao, and Eastern UP like Gorakhpur, Balia, all these areas. And groundwater scarcity. Your Bundelkhand areas, because topsoil is not there. You just hit the granite. You just take the 1-2 feet and you hit the granite. There is no topsoil. So these are the problems, and I have tried to put it into on this map. You see, this is overexploited, where water table huge decline, water logging, Tarai areas, the water quality also, the arsenic and fluoride affected areas, and the groundwater scarcity, all these Jhansi, Hamirpur, Banda, Chitrakoot, Mirzapur, Sonbhadra, all these areas, they are the Bundelkhand areas. So There are different typologies of the problems, and we need to address in a very site specific way. One size doesn't fit all. For waterlogging areas, we need different strategy. For groundwater scarce area, we need different strategy. Where water quality is affected, arsenic, geogenic arsenic is coming up in a very big way. And it is a slow poison. Many people are slowly dying because of arsenic. And this is the trend map. I will not go into detail, but see in 2000 decadal map, the pre-monsoon map, you see all this blue area is rise, and all other than these orange shade, the red shade is all fall, right? So you see rise is happening in the decade in only just like Tarai areas, but also in few areas where groundwater withdrawal is less. And this is post-monsoon, pre-monsoon, and the post-monsoon, you see the actual scenario where the red color has increased. And these are the very, the critically overexploited areas. Land subsidence, already in the first presentation, land subsidence are also happening in UP also. Sudden surge of rain, and because there is a vacuum, there is a space, and sudden recharge is happening, and the land is land subsidence is there. These are the stress blocks, of course, in 2011, but now I'll show you the latest data. The overexploited blocks were 111, critical 68, semi-critical 82, and safe 559 blocks. And the critical overexploited blocks are those blocks where groundwater exploitation is more than 100%. That means it is more than recharge. So it is like a bank balance. If you put in your bank 100 rupees and withdraw 200 rupees, you would be in red, right? So in the aquifer system, the recharge is less and you are withdrawing more. So your areas are becoming overexploited. And the critical areas are those areas where, those areas where groundwater exploitation is more than 90%. Semi-critical exploitation is more than 70%, and safe is where groundwater exploitation is less than or equal to 70%, with no decline in groundwater levels in both pre and post-monsoon period. So that is the thing. This is how we categorize these blocks into different categories. But what is happening? We are creating overexploited areas in many of the upcoming cities, smart cities also. You see, many of them are smart cities in the lower graph. See what is happening, the decline. Meerut, Ghaziabad, Gautam Buddha Nagar, Lucknow, Varanasi, Kanpur, Allahabad, Muzaffarnagar, Agra, Jaunpur. These are the areas where groundwater decline is very high. And in these areas, the master plans have already been made. So what we need to do? We need to sit together with the Land Development Agency and find out, because still they have not expanded, they have not increased their city limits to a very large extent, and there's a scope to protect the aquifer protection areas. So focused urban area for these conservation mission, we have identified some districts, and we are taking some recharge studies also in some of these districts, especially in terms of the protection and wetland rejuvenation. Now, water table is highly variable and unstable. There is a both long-term and short-term fluctuation is happening. We have seen from the piezometric data, and there are deep water level zones within the city. Within the city, some of the areas we find that the groundwater pumpage is very high, but in some areas it is unsafe. So within the city also, you have the deep water level zone and you have the areas which are safe. So a lot of heterogeneity in the aquifer systems. I've already told you that there is a steady large scale mass loss, and this paper was from the first author, the first presentation from NGRI Tiwari et al. See that the rate of decline is there's a steady state, large scale mass loss, and this region lost almost like 54 kilometer cube plus minus whatever is there, 54 plus minus 9 kilometer cube per year. That was the loss of groundwater between April 2002 to June 2008. This paper was published in 2009. So biggest mass loss on earth happened in India, that to part of the Ganga basin and the western India. So there is a quasi irreversible aquifer degradation, decreasing groundwater storage, and the dewatering of the aquifers are also leading to the intrusion of salinity, especially in the coastal areas of India and Bangladesh. These are some of the piezometric data that we get. For example, this is in Agra, how the water table is at 46.9 and below, meter below the ground. Then Allahabad 23, in Fatehpur Narayan, then Lucknow Polytechnic Chauraha 42.53 from the piezometers. So the groundwater table is getting very high. And you see that this is happening in just few months. And we have one station at Valmi, very close to my university, and see how the water table has declined from 9.87 meter in October 2012 to 15.85 meter in April 15. And today it is almost like 25 meter. So from 9 meter, we have gone to 25 meter in almost like 15 years. So there is a decline almost like 1 meter. So I have told you there is a almost decline of 1 meter every year. Now this is again Mathura and the areas where we have seen that not only the water table is, the rivers are becoming the losing rivers, because the rivers are giving back to the aquifers. Those rivers were the gaining rivers. They used to get water from the ground, but now these river systems have become the losing rivers because of the water table decline. And partly this is happening due to rainfall deficit. We have seen that there was decade of low rainfall, and that low rainfall also led to the decline in recharge. So we are losing the critical aquifer protection areas, and there is a need to map those areas and mainstream into master plan. So we did one study in Lucknow. We took the satellite pictures of right from 1966 Corona satellite Landsat, and we identified all those channels, wetlands, lakes, and water bodies, including the, you see in this map, you see some of the river systems have already disappeared. I have identified 9 rivers in Lucknow. People only know of Gomti River, but there are many rivers which got lost. And those rivers, with the rivers, we also lost the catchment. For example, this is the Buck River. You see the Buck stream here. Now, nobody knows about Buck Nadi.
Sorry,
Nadi,
Professor Datta, you have 5 minutes left. Otherwise, we have lots of questions. So,
okay. So let me conclude in the next 5 minutes. So these are the critical aquifer production areas. You see a lot of paleo channels are there, wetlands, and the first and second order streams. So we integrated this into the master plan. We took the master plans, but incidentally, Lucknow has 3 urban, land authorities. We have Awas Vikas, we have Lucknow Development Authority, and we have Lucknow Cantonment, and all of them have their different master plans. So we took their master plans, we converged into one, and we took the land suitability analysis we did, where we used the model fuzzy lossy and AHP. We made the urban suitability maps using all those criteria, like lithology, land suitability, soil suitability, and these were many factors were there, like infrastructure, morpho land use, land suitability, and integrated onto this map. But we also found that many areas were in transition areas, natural areas were becoming transitional, and rural areas were becoming urban. So we were losing, there were loss of many critical areas, and we mapped those areas. You see all these red areas, there's a loss of aquifer protection areas due to unplanned expansion, due to less regard to groundwater, due to not taking mainstreaming the water concern into a master plan. And we did on a very large scale at the block level. So these are different maps. I will not go into detail. So basically, my work said that you have only close to 25% of the area which is suitable for urban growth. And this goes to all the cities. As a thumb rule, only your city can have 33% of the concrete. Rest, they are weakly suitable, very weakly suitable. Right? So as a thumb rule, only 2/3 of the area should be concrete. Rest also. These are the urban conflict analysis, some of the maps, the paleo channels, and how the groundwater flow is happening, the base flow is decreasing. The rivers are becoming the influent rivers. Earlier, they were all effluent rivers. They were getting groundwater, but base flow is declining. There's a rapid decline of the base flows. Base flow index of Gomti has also declined. And we did on an entire basin. First, we did on the city, but we extended this work to the entire basin. And there's a rapid loss of groundwater unless until we take this into policy making to legislation. And you see this picture, this river became intermittent. This was the perennial river because of the lack of groundwater. So basically rivers also need groundwater. We think that river is getting water, but even Ganga river, the groundwater contribution is very high, more than the surface water in the lean season. So these are some of the work on the zonations, smaller rivers, then coming on quality. I will not go into detail because we mapped the areas where landfills were polluting, heavy metals and all those things, cadmium, arsenic, chromium. And we also did buffer contaminated. So coming back to the last slide, this is arsenic, fluoride. You see how fluoride is affecting the skeletal dental fluorosis and skeletal fluorosis in Fatehpur district. Arsenic quality. So these are the things that first you need a catchment planning approach, plan with water, develop water storage habitat, and use nature-based water treatment systems. Then we use wastewater management reuse policy to ease stress on groundwater. A lot of STP is giving you treated reclaimed water, use it for non-potable purposes. Use the master plan and zonal development plans where these sites are designated as groundwater recharge zones, and land use plans sensitive to groundwater. And finally, there's a need for convergence and coherence. We have the land use plans, we have the different agencies, but the institutional, regulatory, and legal systems should converge and work seamlessly. So last slide, prepare a groundwater vision document for every district, 100-year plan. I always say in my lecture, don't make 5-year, 10-year plans, make a 100-year plan, how your city is going to look in 2100, aquifer mapping. Do micro level aquifer mapping on 1:5,000 scale. Check unregulated and excessive extraction. Conducting management has not been practiced, surface and groundwater. Regulate rainwater harvesting. A lot of rainwater harvesting is leading to pollution of groundwater. People puncture the clay and discharge their contaminants. We have seen in tanneries. Please regulate rainwater. Rainwater has a lot of bad impact also. And finally, groundwater sanctuary that we have been saying for so many years. Develop groundwater sanctuary just like areas reserved for recharge, no interference, nothing. So we will never know the true worth of water till the last well is dry. Our Thomas Fuller, the famous quote. Thank you so much for giving me time and space. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Datta. The main points that came up is like very important. The importance of this micro level aquifer mapping and the legislation of the aquifer protection zones. So it is very important because Professor Shashank Shekhar also actually talked about the aquifer protection. And the very important point that you came up with is the capacity building programs, which are very important, and CAC is also working on to it. And so bridging of policy and practice can be done. Now you have shown all the issues of Uttar Pradesh on quantity and quality. And I'm sure everyone agrees that not only Uttar Pradesh, but Haryana, Rajasthan, West Bengal, Bihar, they are also facing the same problem of quality and quantity. And it's a very critical problem that influent rivers have become effluent rivers, which is a big concern. And you also echoed the same problem of what Dr. Gillot also said, that over extraction is a critical issue in this Gangetic Plain area. And the protection of the groundwater zones are very important. Now, thank you all the panelists, but before that, we have lots of questions coming up. Can you open the question answer box? So Dr. Gillot and Professor Shashank Shekhar, can you please switch on your camera so that we can start with the questions?
Yeah.
So, Dr. Gillot, so we have the first question from Mr. Manish Mishra. Are there any long-term consequences of land subsidence on regional tectonics and seismic activity, and how can this be better understood? If you can just focus 1 or 2 points on that.
Just are there any long-term consequence of?
Just long-term consequences of land subsidence on regional tectonics and seismic activities.
Oh, I mean, the question seems to be a bit.
He's trying to understand what are the consequences of land subsidence, on whether the tectonics has changed due to this, or whether there is a triggering of any seismic activity due to this.
Okay. Okay. The way I understand it, whether it is tectonic activity or whether it is earthquake occurrence process, all of them they produce deformation. All of them they produce deformation. The shear topography, what you see today is the result of plate tectonics, is the result of earthquake cycle. So, and the consequence of earthquake cycle, if you really ask me, long-term consequence of earthquakes are beautiful, fantastic, because only because of earthquake, we have this topography in terms of Himalaya, in terms of Andaman Belt, everything. So a short-term consequence of earthquakes are damage. It kills people. But the long-term consequence of plate tectonics or earthquakes are fantastic. I mean, that's the reason because of which we are staying in the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Imagine if there was no Himalaya, there was no plate tectonics, no earthquakes, no Himalaya. No Himalaya means no rainfall. No rainfall means no fertile land. No fertile land means no breadbasket of India. The place where you guys are coordinating this conference, Indo-Gangetic Plain is the breadbasket, and if there was no tectonics, forget about Indo-Gangetic Plain. Anyway, so that's the philosophical answer. But consequence of land subsidence because of groundwater extraction, yes, of course. I mean, the structural damage, the buildings are going to damage for sure. That's number one. But before those building damage, imagine how these civilizations they have moved. These civilizations have moved because groundwater conditions have probably failed in that region. So that's why these civilizations have moved from place to place. So consequence, short-term consequence of groundwater overexploitation is now, of course, the building damage. But the long-term consequence of this is wiping out of the civilization.
Okay.
I hope that answers my question.
Yeah. So next one, Mr. Manish Mishra is asking, how can international collaboration and data sharing improve our understanding of global land subsidence?
Well,
do you think data sharing will help?
I do not know. I mean, like in this particular context, most of the problems of ground subsidence, particularly related to groundwater exploration or exploitation, is generally local problem. And the moment you take measures against it, the moment you regulate the groundwater exploitation, the moment you have good techniques, for example, INSAR is a very good technique. That's where, but the good thing is that INSAR data are free of cost. I mean, you can just download the data, satellite data from Sentinel or ALOS, and you can work with it. So I mean, the
Okay.
global collaboration is always good in terms of understanding new techniques, in terms of understanding science. But at this point of time, it's not that because if there is no global cooperation in this, so we will not be able to progress. That's not correct. We already know where we are and what we need to do. So it's at this point of time, the ball is actually in our court. But of course, later on, for sure, it always helps.
Thank you, Dr. Gehlot. We'll have some other panelists. Okay, so I want to actually ask this question for Shashank. How can current scenario of change in rainfall pattern affect the groundwater recharge in the areas which previously received high rainfall, but the changing pattern have made a challenge?
Yeah.
Professor Shashank Shekhar.
Yeah, that's a good question. First, that the way your rainfall is changing, maybe the total rainfall remains same, but the pattern changes. You have heavy concentrated rainfall in a small amount of time. And now that's going to do? It will create urban waterlogging and flooding because you have a high amount of rainfall in a very small time. Now see, you need food, but you need to eat it daily in a small amount. You can't eat food for the whole month in one go. So the groundwater system can receive some recharge in one incidence of rainfall. But if there is too much of rainfall, that hole cannot go into recharge system. So we need a little tweaking here, that you make a recharge structure. At the same time, there should be properly managed stormwater lines so that the excess water through the stormwater lines are diverted to urban water bodies or maybe urban lakes or urban streams. So that helps in fighting this, it's a possible mitigation measure which we see in case there is some change in the climate or which we are experiencing nowadays. That's small concentrated rainfall. That is one way. So your stormwater drains have to be properly managed. You should have sufficient amount of recharge structures. So some is accommodated there and the rest is diverted through a stormwater drain to urban water bodies or streams. And then the whole water is utilized. So that is my take on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Professor Datta, see, everyone is interested in aquifer mapping, and your aquifer mapping, the justification has actually made people interested. So there is a question from Vivek Yadav saying that is aquifer mapping available on urban areas? And if yes, where do we get it actually? So this is Mr. Vivek Yadav asking you this question. Professor Datta.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. Actually, already a national aquifer mapping project is going on under World Bank assistance, I guess, national NHP, National Hydrology Project, NHP. And in NHP, there is a component on aquifer mapping. Some of the districts have already come up with the aquifer maps, but they are not good on scale. I would say that, within a city like Lucknow is 2,500 square kilometer, Delhi is 1,500 something, close to 1,550 square kilometer. So you divide into grid, right, and do on a very micro scale, because your aquifers are quite dynamic in time and space. So one way of doing is that, okay, depth you are getting from the automatic stations. But there are lithological maps, there are studies done by CGWB, Geological Survey of India, but they have not been clubbed together on a 3D map. So now science using machine learning, using AI, so many things have come up, and I'm using it now. I'm using machine learning, I'm using AI to delineate the areas which are quickly, can store the rainwater. Some of the areas, their storability coefficient very high. Some of the areas where, there is a layer of clay which will not allow the fresh water to percolate down. So we need a quite like a dynamic system, like how, on your computer, you have the map of urban area, which is not a rocket science. You just club it, all this DWR data, your 3D, whatever, wherever who is doing drilling, they have the data. Metro has a lot of data. The many companies now, they are doing it privately. So we need to bring it together. We put it in the law, the Groundwater Act, on the micro aquifer mapping, but still we are not doing it. We have done in some parts of Lucknow, but it needs to be done on a larger area, on all cities and towns.
Okay, another question for you, Professor Datta. What steps can individual, organization and government take for climate resilient groundwater future?
What
So-
steps? Sorry, could you repeat?
Means at individual level, at organization level and government level. Pooja Singh is asking this. Means what can be done to actually ensure a climate resilient groundwater future? She's trying to understand what are the roles played by individuals.
See,
or-
groundwater is a very critical resource. Once polluted, you cannot unpollute the water. Groundwater is in situ water, right? If anything goes inside groundwater, it is your reserve, just like a bank balance. So if you lose the quality, so you have to be very careful when you give permit, when you give license, rainwater harvesting system, whether they have punctured the, the first layer and gone into deeper. Now people are doing it. Some designs are promoting the contamination. So rainwater harvesting and the decentralized harvesting should not be given to such agencies, and there should be periodic monitoring. Secondly, we talk about rivers, but we do not talk about floodplains. Floodplains and the adjacent water bodies, they are part of the wider river ecosystem. So if you talk in totality of water ecosystem, then you also conserve a lot of rainwater. And finally, there is a need for implementation of the policy and law. Right now, the groundwater department is just understaffed. There are just few people working, and the state, there is a district groundwater authority has been made. Several authorities have been made. Decentralization have been made, but there is no integration. So at the executive level, there is one legislation, judiciary and executive, 3 arms. So at the executive level, we need to be more proactive. When we make master plan, scientists should be invited, academicians should be part of the master planning. Now the master planning is done in closed room. They do not consider the land suitability. They do not consider the morpho land use. Morpho land use is very important. Which areas are good aquifer areas, which areas class 1 agriculture area. So urbanization can happen on westland also. Urbanization can happen on class 3 agriculture land also. And every city has the TCPA, Town and Country Planning Department, TCPD. Please go to them, involve them, take the land suitability map, and also call the experts, ecologists, hydrogeologists. They should be part of the master plan. Your voice is mute, I guess.
Last question to Professor Shashank Shekhar, very quickly. So how can rainwater harvesting be promoted in the metropolitan cities? This is from Priyanshu Gupta.
Yeah, it's a 3-pronged approach when we go for a metropolitan city. First, at the level of individual. So you have to make a structure and ensure that it is functional, it's not a soak pit, and it is adequately maintained yearly. Second, at the level of community. So if you are a community, you can adopt a park, a pond, and maybe rejuvenate it, or maybe you can adopt some water body nearby. Then institutional, like your apartment owners association, that is RWA, Resident Welfare Association, or the concerned government agency. They can take up this approach, and then there are a set of designs suiting the local hydrogeologic condition for urban and rural areas. So that can be taken up, and it has worked well. It's not that it's not working, but that tangible, the tangible effects are not so good. It's not that the system has not worked, it is working. But there are some malpractices, some not functional, some maintenance issue. So we need to be more focused. And so when individual, community, and institution, they together work in a good spirit, I think there will always be tangible results. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, panelists. So it has been a great discussion. So the points that came up is the consequences that are happening due to the over extraction causing the land subsidence. Then we have that flood water can be conserved, and it's very important to actually map the aquifer at micro level and conserve the groundwater recharge zones. These are the main points that are coming up to have a climate resilient river cities. So because the inflow rivers are actually not decreasing day by day. So that is a concern. So thank you very much, panelists. And we have lots of questions, but the time is actually restricted to 2 hours. So I hope we have actually addressed maximum number of questions. So thank you very much and have